I recently completed a 30-day Spartan Mode challenge. Spartan Mode is a protocol designed to be the optimal way to overcome addictive behaviors, delete bad habits from your life, install good habits, and completely rewire your brain while you're doing it. Think of it as an extreme form of dopamine detox with a whole lot of exercise, deep work, and self-improvement added on top. I made a short video highlighting what my experience of the Spartan Mode challenge was like, and in today's podcast episode, I share my experience in even more detail. Keep listening to learn my biggest takeaways and lessons from doing 30 days in this high-intensity challenge. The most surprising and unexpected effects I got from doing Spartan Mode, how to go back to normal life after doing a challenge like this without losing all your good habits, and exactly what you need to know and how to prepare if you want to do a total brain reset challenge like this for yourself. You can find links to my other Spartan Mode videos in the description of this episode, and you can also find a link there through which you can join the Quit by Healing community and sign up for the Quit by Healing program. So check out the description for all further details. And with that, let's get into the episode.
Number one question on anyone who read the title's mind: what is the Spartan Challenge?
So the Spartan Challenge is basically the best possible dopamine detox protocol. Right? Where it came from is people started asking me, there's these different like no fap modes, and they were like, oh, should I do hard mode or no,
or monk
mode or whatever? And I then looked into that and I thought, well, hold on. If the goal is to overcome an addiction and essentially heal your brain, because that's always what we talk about on Quit by Healing, right? This is the goal here is never to just, don't fap anymore and then that's better. It's like, hold on, the real problem is the addiction, and how can you really undo the addiction, essentially?
Beyond the surface level.
Beyond the surface level, exactly. And so there's more to that, or basically the simplest way to do that is, okay, you abstain. Obviously, overcoming any addiction, you have to abstain. And if you abstain long enough, yes, your brain will heal, right? It's basically just time will undo, and it's in your brain, the habit. In a way, an addiction is just an extremely strong habit, right, that you can't control. And that habit will like slowly weaken over time by just you not doing the thing anymore.
Right.
So, okay. But if the question is, well, what's the best way to do this? Then my thinking was, well, there's got to be more than just don't do it. Yeah. And this is where Spartan Mode was born, because I thought I basically developed this as my own idea, and because the other things was called monk mode or whatever, I thought Spartan Mode sounds cool, so that's what I called it.
It's a lot cooler to be Spartan,
right? Cool to be a Spartan than a monk. I agree. So, but yeah, it basically came out of, I thought, well, how would I design the perfect protocol for someone to recover from an addiction and accelerate that like brain rewiring, which means that you want to get rid of the addictive habit, plus like really wire in new and better habits, replacement habits, as efficiently as possible. And there's the whole lifestyle factor, right? The whole lifestyle factor of if you are, because I think that the risk that we have is that you replace one addiction with another. So you go, okay, I'm not watching porn anymore, but I'm just scrolling social media all day, or smoking weed or something, right?
Or binging Netflix or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're still overstimulating yourself. You've just found different sources of stimulation, and that doesn't solve the problem, because these other addictions, these other sources of hyperstimulation have many of the same effects, and especially the mental health stuff. It's like the kind of thing, oh, why do I feel so bad? It's like you never see sunlight, you're staring at screens all day, you're smoking weed all day, you're constantly stimulating yourself, you're constantly on social media comparing yourself to others. It's like, oh, why am I depressed, right? So there's these lifestyle factors that also really, again, if you ask me what's the best way to overcome this addiction is, well, fix that stuff too, right? Like basically fix your whole life. And this then became Spartan Mode. It's like, okay, if you're going to do this the best way possible, do all of these things. Now, the list of rules, I'm not going to go into all of it. We have a separate video with exactly the list of rules in the protocol, and we have a separate video that shows you kind of my day-to-day.
Yeah, we'll link those down below.
Exactly, yeah. So, but the basic idea is that you completely remove these sources of hyperstimulation, all of them, which means no social media, no games, no shows, no movies, no porn, no cigarettes, no alcohol, no junk food, no sugar, etc. All of this stuff that you compulsively use in order to because they are all essentially of the same nature, right? You use these things to distract yourself or to comfort yourself. You know, I had a really bad day, so I'm going to have some ice cream. Or, I had a really bad day, so I'm going to spoil myself with video games. It's the same thing, basically. You're seeking that stimulation and distraction. And you just cut all of that down to zero. And so in terms of your consumption, you basically do not consume anything that is entertaining. The only thing that you're allowed to consume is you're allowed to read books, basically. That's the one thing I left, because I also recommend that you don't, and for the challenge I did not watch educational YouTube videos or documentaries or anything. Because these things are always like 80% entertainment and 20% actual information. Plus, even if you're watching a informative video, then the sidebar is going to be full of recommendations of clickbaity stuff, right?
Right.
And you're just about to be pulled in again. So it's just much easier to cut that stuff down to zero.
Yeah. And just to clarify, when you say books, you're not talking manga or comic books, right?
No, it doesn't count if it just looks like a book from the outside. I'm talking about non-fiction books. So, you can read books about business, health, whatever, right? So that, in terms of consumption, that's basically, for the most part, you're just not consuming stuff. Okay. So that's a big one. And then in terms of how you feed yourself, no processed food. That's the simplest. Basically, if no refined sugar, no processed foods. So you're eating vegetables and fruit and meat and just things that are the real thing, right?
Yeah. Whole foods.
Whole foods, exactly. That's what you're eating. Obviously, no alcohol, no stimulative stuff. And then in terms of positive habits that you add in, because, hey, you'll suddenly have all this time.
Right.
A couple of things you do is you make sure that you spend time working on some important project every day. And that's really individual. For me, I'm working on my business. And I make sure that I have like undistracted time working on what matters most in my business. But this could also be, for a student, it could be, this is when you do your studying. This could also be someone just working their job, right?
Yeah.
But you basically want to make sure that you have time spent on doing work that is somehow engaging and challenging, because that is a source of good dopamine in the best case, right? Learning things, building things, creating things, achieving things is healthy dopamine. And then another big one is exercise. And the way I laid it out is just basically 2 exercise sessions per day. And originally what I was doing was kind of a heavy, an intense exercise session first thing in the morning, and then a lighter exercise session later in the day. And I switched it around for this challenge. Basically, it doesn't matter. I mean, You're not going to go super hard twice a day. I think that's also not necessarily ideal. But what works, I think, is having one lighter and one more intense. So let's say you go to the gym, lift weights, that's the intense session. And then maybe you do half an hour of yoga, or you go for a light run or something. That would be the less intense session, right? So you exercise twice a day. And on top of that, there's some habits like daily writing. So you basically, every day you spend some time writing about how the day went in the evening. And you just spend some time, maybe stuff comes up. You write down what you're frustrated about. You write down what you're processing. And you just insert that as a habit. Every single day you're sitting down and writing, and kind of processing the day, processing your thoughts and emotions. That's the basic overview, right? So remove all the junk, exercise a lot, and add some positive habits, basically.
And one thing I want to ask you about, when we talk about dopamine detox, it usually sounds like dopamine is the enemy, so therefore refrain from it for the 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is, right? So that when you go back to doing the stuff you were doing, like the hit you get, you feel
it's even better,
right? That's kind of like what the traditional dopamine detoxes are. And you were saying, no, we're not saying this is the enemy. We're changing the source where we get it from.
Exactly.
Right? That's why it's a healing process.
Yeah. And I had to kind of take a bit of a leap, and I simply use the term dopamine detox because that's a recognizable term. It's a really dumb term, right? Because it's like dopamine's not toxic. Yeah. You're not detoxing from it. It's just, it makes no sense as a term, really. But that's what people use because it's catchy, right? So the thing that we mean when we say dopamine detox is really more like a stimulation detox. Right. And yeah, you're absolutely right. If you basically go, yeah, I'm going to not use social media for 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, you use it again. You're just giving yourself a harder hit, basically. Yeah. You're just giving yourself like that one little roller coaster, and then you're back to the way you were before. That's pointless. That's completely pointless. So yeah, like very, very quick crash course on dopamine. So dopamine, in very simple terms, can be thought of as like the motivation, the seeking hormone. Makes you go seek something out and then feel rewarded. So let's say you're hungry, you imagine like your ancestor in the wilderness, right? You feel hunger, you go, okay, I'm going to have to go out of the cave and seek food.
Right.
And then you go looking and you find a bush with berries, and that's super rewarding, right? Or you track an animal, you hunt it, and then you eat it, it's super rewarding, right? And that's what dopamine is supposed to do. And if you didn't have dopamine, I think that's, this kind of experiment where if you remove the parts of a rat's brain that create dopamine, so there's just zero dopamine in the rat, it will like starve to death next to a bowl of food, right?
Wow.
So there's just zero motivation. You wouldn't do anything without dopamine, right? So in that sense, it's clearly not a bad thing. We're not trying to avoid dopamine. The problem is that this dopamine system that's meant to send you out into the world to do things is being hijacked by a million tiny rewards every day. So instead of going out and finding a mate, or going out and creating something in your community, or making something of yourself, you're just getting the next little hit of dopamine and the next as you scroll through TikTok, right?
Right.
And that's what we want to avoid, because you have these lots and lots of rapid tiny dopamine hits that distract you from the stuff that actually matters in your life. And this overstimulation of dopamine, because again, if you think about the example I just gave, you have one dopamine event that's spread out over a relatively long time, right? You feel hungry, and then maybe a couple of hours later, and a lot of walking and looking for and doing stuff later, you have food. That's like the one arc of seeking the reward and getting the reward. And what we have now is thousands of little hits every minute, right? If you scroll fast enough, basically. And this causes an overstimulation, which then essentially overloads the system, makes the whole system down-regulate, and then leads to essentially a feeling of, everything is pointless, and the only thing that I can be interested in is the next dopamine hit, right?
Right.
So it makes you seek stronger and stronger stimulation and crave nothing other than the next little hit. And obviously this is not a recipe for a good or happy life. Right. So that's really the goal with dopamine detox. And this is also why, so to bring all of this back to the Spartan challenge, right? This is also why the Spartan challenge is 30 days. So I did all of what I described for 30 days consecutively, nonstop. And I just want to be clear, because I know that some people listening to this have like grown up in front of screens. I mean that literally, right? I did not watch a single YouTube video or read a single tweet or look at a single Instagram post for 30 days back to back, no exceptions ever, right? I'm not talking about, it's not kind of an intermittent fasting thing where I'm like, oh yeah, today I wasn't on social media for 12 hours, so now I'm going to be on social media for 4 hours. No.
Let me make up for all of it.
Exactly, right? No, I'm literally talking about none of this stuff for 30 days, no exceptions. That's what we're doing. Okay.
So in a world of essentially no more boredom and unlimited stimulation, you're creating space in your life to be bored. And with the writing habit you mentioned, I would imagine that whatever bubbles up, the things that perhaps you haven't dealt with for years because you've never allowed yourself to feel them, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one benefit I can see of this. Like, what would you say were like the top 3 benefits that you experienced from this run?
So let me address that first, actually. So the thing with stuff bubbling up, this is very likely to happen. And, I also want to say, like, someone who jumps into a challenge like this from a lifestyle that would be considered normal now, this could be very, very intense, and it could be very emotional. So you could have a sense of, I really have to, like, it's almost like part of your system believes that you need to go to Instagram to survive, right? Yeah. You might feel like part of you is dying, and you might be very emotional doing that. And I just want to make it clear, like, I already avoid social media as much as I can. I already have a relatively healthy lifestyle and so on. So for me, some of these things, this whole detox aspect is a bit milder for me than it might be for most people. And I just want to kind of give that as a warning. If you do this and you notice that you're completely freaking out, and maybe you're already freaking out, even just at the thought of not using social media, yes, that is the addicted part of your brain that's going like, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? So this could be very intense. And the writing helps with that, because instead of just like panicking, you can sit down and write, here's what's happening. Oh my God, here's what the voice in my head is saying. It's like, we absolutely have to. What if something important happened on Instagram and I'm blah, blah, blah. And you write it down, right? Yeah. And then you see that it's probably kind of ridiculous and unreasonable, but also just expressing it helps. Expressing it in writing helps. So, and on that note, one thing that happened to me that is definitely an effect of being on the challenge was that I had several difficult conversations with people that I would have otherwise probably not had. Because what happened is that I noticed, there's some tension between me and this other person, and I can't escape. Because that's what you usually do, you know? So maybe you're in your messages and you see that one person where it's like, I have to, you know, something unpleasant happened or whatever, or they owe you money and you have to tell them about it or something, right? There's some tension. What do? You immediately switch to a different app and give yourself some
distraction. Make sure you don't open the chat.
Exactly.
So you read
it. Exactly. You know what I mean? So you always have like this easy escape. And this was totally unexpected, but I had several difficult conversations with people during this time, because what would happen is this tension, I noticed this tension, it's like, there's something I need to talk about. And then it just stays there and I can't run away. And then I'm like, well, I guess I might as well. And what am I doing this evening? Well, nothing. Right after work, what am I doing? Nothing.
I can't read anymore. I'm bored.
So I might as well reach out to this person and be like, listen, we need to talk. And as it obviously is with difficult conversations, usually once you've done it, you're glad you did it, right?
Right.
You're super relieved and it's a weight off your back and you're like, I should have done this a long time ago. And this happened to me several times where I was so glad. And it also made me think, I guess this is actually normal. This is what's supposed to happen, is you feel the tension between you and someone else and you go, let's talk about it.
What's going on, right? So would you categorize this as an unexpected benefit or an expected benefit?
No, this was unexpected. I didn't think this would happen, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say the biggest benefit I experienced, and that was especially in the first 2 weeks, is that I was just in flow. I was just way more in flow than otherwise. And one reason for that, and by being in flow, I just mean that I was just so engaged with what I was doing, you know? I was like getting out of the bed in the morning, doing my morning routine, getting to work, doing my training, and I was just like so into it. And I think in part, that is simply because of a lack of options, right? You might as well be fully engaged in your work. And I think that, and this was also a surprise to me, because like I said before, I'm not a heavy social media user as it is. And so I thought, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference to go to zero social media. It did make a difference. And I think this is one reason, is that even if you use social media moderately, it's there as an option. So it's like I'm here working, but part of my mind is like, I could be doing something else, you know? Yeah. I could be maybe scrolling on Twitter instead. Yeah. I might.
I should tweet this.
Maybe I should tweet this. This is a great insight. Yeah, exactly. So, and just taking away that option makes it more so that you're at work and you're like, this is what's going on. This is what's going on in my life. There are no alternatives. Let's go, you know? So, and that gave me a really strong, just sense of like being present and being in flow. And also a weird thing I noticed is that my days just felt more coherent, which sounds strange, but I guess the inversion of it is that when I'm using my phone more, my days feel more fragmented. And I think this is maybe in part because of this weird effect that phones have, or in general, these addictive things, these addictive activities have this weird memory hole effect where, you know, you can swipe, like basically think about the last time you were swiping on social media for maybe an hour or more. And what do you remember from that?
Practically nothing.
Right? Yeah. It's basically, can you remember anything? Like, and you might have at the time thought, this is so funny, this is so cool, this is so, and it just disappears, right? It leaves no impression on your memory. And so And I think that might be why your day feels fragmented, because it's like you experience part of the day, then you whip out your phone and there's a black hole. And then you experience the next part of your day until it's interrupted by the next black hole and so on. And by not having that, my days just felt more like one coherent arc somehow, you know, which I know sounds kind of weird. And again, it was totally unexpected. But I was like, oh, this makes more sense. The way I'm living now somehow makes more sense. I'm just here for more of it, you know. But also in a much more practical sense, I mean, it was an immensely good period for everything I tracked, really. So for my business, I definitely made loads of progress in this period, and, you know, definitely more than I would have made outside of the challenge, no doubt.
Right.
And also with my training, with my physical goals, I made good progress. And especially for me, the diet is more tricky than like training is. I like training quite a lot, so I don't have to like push myself to train more. But my diet is always the thing where I fall off easily. And that is the limiting factor on my training results. So I think I got noticeably better results in my training during that month. And I think it's mainly because there was just no junk food. My diet was just on point every day. And that gives you a boost, right? That makes a difference. Also things like sleep, you know. My sleep, you can see on my sleep graph, you know, I track it with the Oura Ring. Before the challenge, it's like a bit up and down. It's not super irregular, but as soon as the challenge starts, it's just a flat line. Like every day I just get the same amount of sleep. The sleep quality is consistently high. And I think, again, this is just because you just get dialed into this routine. You're not looking at screens late at night. There's not these things that are disrupting your sleep, right? And then obviously the knock-on effect of sleep is higher productivity, more energy, better results in the gym, etc., etc. So in a very, very pragmatic sense, in terms of my business growth and in terms of my personal development, this is a fantastic month, right? So even if there's nothing else involved, and, you know, for me, I also, you know, I'm not doing this in order to overcome an addiction. At this point, I am addiction-free. So even if there's no addiction, even if you're not doing this to overcome porn addiction or another addiction, it's still totally worth doing. It's worth doing for your health, for your mind, for your business, for your goals, right? This was an amazing month for me, no doubt.
Yeah, it's important to point that out. This is not just, oh, if you suffer, if you're a victim of some addiction. No. Like, this is what would you call it? Because it sounds like you just killed it for a month, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a taste of what you're capable of, basically, right? Because you're removing all the blockages. And I think, you know, we do a lot of work in different areas in our businesses that have to do with, let's say, human potential, right?
Yeah.
Like we work on helping people get closer to fulfilling their potential in various ways. And I think what's usually the case is that the reason you're not reaching your potential is because of obstacles, right? So in a way, it's not that you lack the tools or the motivation or whatever. There's obstacles in the way. If you clear the obstacles, you'll be amazing. You know what I mean? And so Spartan Mode, I think, does that. The big benefit you get is you just get rid of all this junk. You get rid of all the stuff that's usually holding you back and slowing you down. And that's what I mean, is it gives you a taste of what you're actually capable of. Because really, hopefully you do this and you see, oh my God, I could live like this. You know, I could be this guy.
Yeah. Like, I could be this all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so one question I have is around the options thing, right? Because I put myself in the mindset of somebody who's either watching or listening to this. And for this person, it could be like, oh, what do you mean for a month? Like, I can't watch a movie? I can't, you know, it could feel like I'm taking away from my quality of life.
Totally.
Like, I don't have to be addicted to the movies, and I can go twice a month, for example, to the theaters, right? But when you remove all this stuff, like, what is that experience like? Did you have periods where you missed it, or did you even think about it?
So that, I think, is a great question. I expected that I would miss things way more than I did. Because I thought that as well. It's like, oh, okay, but, you know, like exactly like you said, I'm not addicted to movies. I'm not addicted to shows. I just watch them every once in a while, right? What's the harm? But yeah, the experience of cutting it down to zero, the experience of taking away the option entirely is on another level. It is different from just, it's different from moderation. And I think that's, you know, to me, that's the biggest maybe takeaway, the biggest lesson is I noticed in in various ways, I noticed the huge difference between doing things in moderation and just cutting to zero. And I think there's two aspects. One of them is that moderation often doesn't work. So this would be me and chocolate or me and cookies or whatever. So I easily get addicted to sugar, and if I try to moderate my sugar intake, it doesn't work. I'm the guy who I can buy, a box of or a bar of chocolate, even if I tell myself, I'm going to have one little piece a day, so it should last for 2 weeks or something. No, that thing is going to last for like 20 minutes, right? I can't control myself, basically. So that's one reason why, having the chocolate in the cupboard and trying to not eat it is just unnecessarily difficult. It's much easier to just go, I'm just going to not have any chocolate, period. Yeah. Okay. So that's one factor why cutting to zero is so valuable. Because, and for me, that's literally the experience. Like with sugar, trying to moderate my sugar intake is so hard. But having zero sugar is pretty easy. Like after a week or so, that's just how I live now, Right. So that's one reason. The other reason is also that I think even if you successfully moderate, there's still a different quality in your focus, and I think it has to do with the options thing, right? So, and I'm not saying that to never watch a movie again or anything like that, right? It is, and we can talk about that a bit as well. Like I think the full Spartan mode is not entirely sustainable. I wouldn't want to live the rest of my life like that, although it wouldn't be that bad, right? But, I'm not saying it's harmful to watch a movie once a month. But I think it is still a really good experience to just cut it down to zero and see what happens, see what that feels like. Because one of the things I noticed is that I thought I liked movies and shows a lot more than I do, basically, right? If you would have asked me, how much are you going to miss this? I would say, yeah, quite a bit. And I basically forgot they existed. I mean, honestly, if you told me you could never watch a movie again the rest of your life, I'd be like slightly sad. And then I just get on with it. It's really not that big of a deal. And I think, it's similar to fasting. I think fasting, apart from the health benefits, is a good experience. I'm not saying never eat again. Obviously, that's not going to last very long, right? Like you have to eat again at some point. But it's a good experience to just not eat food for a day or two, to see what that's like and to see how your body and mind responds to the absence of this thing. And so that's why I recommend cutting out literally everything to zero, even the things that you're justifiably not addicted to at all.
Yeah. And it probably removes that mental negotiation and conversation that you have, right? Like, okay, so it's been 4 hours since I had the last piece of chocolate, but if I really want it to last, maybe I should put 6, right? You're just wasting energy and time and your mental faculties debating yourself, basically.
Exactly. And I think you'd be surprised at how much of that, how much of a difference that makes, exactly, because even for things like, should I watch this show today? Should I watch 2 episodes, 3 episodes is maybe a bit too much. This kind of stuff, you're making all these decisions and maybe also guilt tripping yourself. Oh my God, I watched 4 episodes in a row, etc. And then you're not getting enough sleep and so on. You might think that's a small thing, but that's actually a big thing. The amount of sleep you're missing out on, the amount of mental bandwidth you're burning, and even the amount of hours, just the amount of extra hours you get from watching 0 shows and 0 movies is a considerable amount of hours that you're going to be doing something else with. And that turns out to be quite useful. Which, on that note, another unexpected and interesting benefit I received from doing this challenge was that, like I said before, like from a pure life optimization performance standpoint, this was amazing. This month I was absolutely crushing it. But also, this was the best month for my social life in years, okay? I literally have like a list of new friends from the period of this challenge. And the interesting thing about it is I made 0 effort. I did not go into this thinking, okay, I got to go make some friends. I got to go socialize with people in order to like use up this, this extra time I have. I made 0 effort, but just somehow having this extra time makes it easier to say yes to any kind of social opportunity, because you're never like, I'd rather stay in and just play a video game, right? It's like, no, sure. Like I'm tired of working and working out all day.
Right.
Yes, fucking go to dinner with people I don't know or whatever. So you're very willing to say yes to social opportunities. But I think the other factor might also be that you show up a bit differently in social interactions when you do this, right? Because, or at least that's kind of my theory, and I'd love to hear how other people experience this. Because I was thinking about, why did this happen? Why did my social life, like if you could graph it, my social life just took off without any effort? Like, what's going on? I think that it has to do with the fact that by being in this state of, zero distraction and so on, I'm showing up differently in interactions with people, where I have more presence. I have a different quality of mind or something that probably makes it easier for me to connect with people, and then that leads to them wanting to see me again, or them inviting me to the next thing, and so on, Because, the reason this is my theory is because what's clear to me is that the opposite extreme would not have that effect. If you show up to a social thing and you're on your phone the whole time and you don't look anyone in the eye, it's like, well, you're not going to get invited to the next thing, right? Nobody's even going to know your name. So I think that's maybe part of it, why it's like why it felt so effortless. And even that, it's so worth doing it just for that.
I guess this would be great for somebody who struggles with their social life and has like social anxiety in general, right?
Yeah. I think so. So because again, you're removing options, right? You're removing other options, just like, okay, I guess I have to, be present with this. It also, I'm not going to say that it's going to give everyone an amazing social life within 30 days, but if you're someone who struggles with social anxiety and stuff like that, taking away all your distractions will put you in a space where you actually have to confront this, and even so, it could be through the writing, through the meditating, and whatever else you do, where this stuff comes up, right? Because you're sitting there alone with nothing but yourself and your thoughts, and these kinds of things will go, oh, why am I so lonely? Why don't I have friends? Why do I feel so nervous around other people? And the processing of that, and maybe uncovering some underlying fears, and that can take time, right? I'm not saying it's going to work miracles within 30 days, but you're going to make progress. You're going to make some kind of progress, right? And another thing about socializing and social anxieties and stuff is, in terms of socializing, the real world is so much milder than the online world. Because in the online social world is a really harsh place, because you're constantly being shown people to whom you compare poorly. Your feed is constantly showing you people who are like more attractive and fitter and more beautiful and happier and richer and whatever than you. Right. And it's super conflictive, right? Oh, you said something that's, I don't know, that someone misinterpreted as inappropriate, and now people, like strangers on the internet, are piling onto you, right? And ripping you to shreds, right? The real world isn't like that at all. The real world is much, much more pleasant place to socialize with people. And I think that, again, taking away all of that influence of the online stuff and getting more exposure to what are people actually like in real life, which is very, very different from what they're like on the internet, and what is socializing, what are social interactions like in real life, that is part of what I think the solution is to social anxiety and stuff like that.
I would imagine if someone is, deeply addicted to porn, I can't imagine them also being just a blossoming person in their social life,
It's rarely the case, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there are some of those, but... So, honestly, it feels like Spartan Mode, the name, it's very, aptly named, Because the way you were describing this, it reminded me of the experience you had where through writing, you're like, oh, I got to confront this person because there's tension here, right? Mm-hmm. And similarly, you come up with this social anxiety thing. You're like, okay, am I just going to sit down and take it for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Or, well, I have 3 more weeks of this. I might as well do something about this right now, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's about confronting this kind of stuff, and it's about charging forward in that sense, right? And I think what you just said, there's 3 more weeks of that, right? That's another reason why it's good to do it for a long time.
Right.
Because even if if you do this for 5 days or so, it can still be a good experience, still be worth doing. But it would be short enough that you can still be like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but it's almost over,
Right.
But if it's a month, you'd be like, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to be uncomfortable for another 21 days. I'm going to do something about this, right?
Yeah.
So that's another benefit of really, in a way, I think it's a good example of how sometimes doing the hard thing is easier in that sense, right? It's easier to do it really strict and for a long time because you're going to get some real results. If you tried to do, a mini Spartan mode where you go, okay, but I'm not going to, I don't know, you make all the rules a bit softer, I'm going to just use social media a bit less, and I'm going to do a bit of that, and I'm only going to exercise once a day, and I'm still going to allow myself this, and I'm still going to have a bit of sugar, and I'm going to do it for 5 days. What result do you get? Basically nothing, But it might still be difficult because you're constantly struggling. Oh no, but I want more of this, but I told myself not to because I'm in this challenge. So it's like you're struggling for 5 days and you get nothing.
Right.
Whereas if you do it super hard, right, you do it super strict and for a long time, then you're committed. You're like, well, I might as well. And that's when you get the real results.
Yeah, I think it's ironic what you're saying, like committing to the thing and getting rid of all the options, ironically produces the freedom to just be free, right? Just do whatever is required.
Yeah, exactly. It frees you up, right? It frees up your mind. It frees up a lot of your time.
Right.
Although on the other side, I then also felt, or the experience I had is it frees up time, but that time immediately gets occupied with new stuff, in a way, because I was never like sitting around being bored.
Right.
I basically I did a bit more work than I would have done otherwise, probably. But then again, the social stuff took up a lot of time. And I also spent more time reading. And basically, I never felt like, oh my God, what do I do with myself? I have all this time. I was basically busy and in flow the entire time. So again, somehow it's basically easier than you'd think. It's easier than you'd think. But I think it's only easy when you do it hard.
Right. I guess it's one of those things where the anticipation is scarier than the thing itself, right?
100%. Yeah, that's true. I was definitely nervous going into this about how hard it would be. And then I was just loving it once I was actually doing it. Yeah.
Okay. So one question that comes to mind is, on a longer term scale, right? What do you carry forward from this? Because, working out twice a day, I mean, it's doable, but it is kind of unsustainable, right? And I'm sure you're going to go back to screens at some point or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. What I definitely noticed is that the way I was doing the challenge is not sustainable. And I think the main thing was the training, because I did 2 sessions of training every day, no rest days. And that started dragging me down. And in the last week, I had some days where, barely got myself to like do a run in the evening, because I was like, damn, I have to hit another training session, but I was just falling apart, And I've definitely noticed like that, just running out of energy towards the end. And that also started affecting the other aspects. I was less productive and so on in the last week. So I think that was, for me, the main factor is I just need some rest. And even if it's 1 rest day a week, that's probably enough to make it sustainable. But without any rest days, that became too much. So there, in terms of training, having 1 or 2 rest days a week is more reasonable for me, is more sustainable for sure. But I have been thinking about, how to adjust the challenge. I'm thinking about maybe doing another run with like slightly different rules to try and not run out of energy, right? And still get as much benefit as possible. And I think that if you wanted to do this long term, how do you change your life to be as close as possible to Spartan mode in terms of benefits, but to be sustainable? So rest days, and I think that certain things like, go watch a movie every once in a while, that's not going to make a difference, or it's not going to make a significant difference. And as long as, I think it's probably useful to have rules about it, So if you basically say, okay, I'm going to watch movies, but no more than, 2 a month, and only with friends or something like that, so you make it an occasion, so that it doesn't become a kind of, I don't know what to do, I'm bored, I'm just going to download a movie and watch it by myself, I think, and with social media, for example, so for sure, you could easily live without social media no problem. It's good stuff. Basically, I highly recommend it. The only social media thing I missed is Twitter. And that is mainly because I have like a very tightly curated list of people I follow on Twitter, and I've gotten some of my best book recommendations and ideas from there, where I really felt like, okay, if I don't have that, I'm really missing out on some stuff. So, but even there, you know, it's difficult because I do get benefits from Twitter, but I constantly have to prune the list. I constantly have to, you know, unfollow people and mute accounts and stuff, because it just so easily becomes this thing where you've been scrolling for 2 hours in order to find the one good tweet, you know.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, you know, it's really difficult. And all other social media like YouTube, I could happily never watch a YouTube video for the rest of my life, no problem. Which I also didn't expect. I was spending quite a lot of time watching YouTube, and it's just, bottom line, the benefit I actually get from YouTube is so small that, yeah, if it was just like, oh, whatever, YouTube doesn't exist anymore tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I think it's harder to realize there because it's longer form content, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like this was probably a better use of my time because I spent like 20 minutes on this video.
Yeah. No, it's honestly surprising. It's honestly surprising to me. I would have told you that I watch useful and good stuff and that I get good entertainment value out of YouTube and stuff. No, not really. That was an illusion, apparently. So, yeah. So all that is to say, I think that's completely sustainable. You can cut out social media to zero. I think one of the ways, so, you know, talking about Twitter, let's say, if I want to reintroduce this to my life, I think one way to do it is to like just tightly box it in, where I basically can say, you know, I'll check Twitter once a day, and it has to be after 7 and before 9. You know, like in that time window, I can spend like 20 minutes on Twitter per day, and that's it. Because again, I want to remove the option. I don't want to all day be thinking, "Ooh, should I check Twitter right now? Should I check it now? Should I spend some more time here?" I think that's what's toxic, is the constant option, and then the constant debating with yourself how much, you know, and how much longer and so on. So I think that's one healthy way in which to make it sustainable and still use it, is just define very clear rules about it, so that you have long parts of the day. So it's like during the work hours, right? During the hours where you're trying to be productive and make something happen in the world, take away all of these options. There's never an option to do any of this nonsense. And you know, you can still, because I think that's also worth mentioning, obviously, ideally, let's say I want to be working and doing deep work every day between like 9 and 12 in the morning. But there's some days where for some reason that doesn't work. Like there are exceptions, and I'm talking about real exceptions, right? It's not an exception if it happens 3 times a week, right? I'm talking about the like once or twice a month, you might have a social thing where you stay up late and then you sleep in and whatever. Or in my case, sometimes I was so exhausted from the gym that I just didn't have the energy in the morning. But even then, I noticed that if you do something else, but that something else is not a dopamine trap, that's so much better. Because if I'm in the morning, if I'm like, man, I'm too tired right now to do my deep work, okay, what else can I do? Well, I can go for a walk, or I can read a book. That is so much better for me to actually recover, get my energy levels back, and then crush it the rest of the day than if I go, you know what, I'm just gonna veg out and scroll on something. Right. That like ruins the whole day, right? Yeah. So there, I think that's one way in which you can have a bit of both. Make sure that the majority of the day needs to be protected from these options. It needs to be protected from the internal debate about whether or not you should give yourself some junk right now.
So anybody who is considering doing this, right? Some of the excuses that I can hear in my own mind is like, oh, but I'm a social media manager. Like, you know, it's like, fine, but you probably already know that you utilize these tools professionally, right? So outside in your personal life, don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly. I think that's the excuse is often, oh, but I'm building my brand or something. Listen, this is, to be clear, look, I was on TikTok every day because I upload a short to TikTok every day. Right. But here's my interaction with the TikTok feed. It's actually kind of funny. It's actually kind of funny. Maybe we can demonstrate it, right? Here's what happens when I open the TikTok app to upload the daily short. that's how long I watch the feed, right? Because that's how long it takes for the button to appear, right? Wow. So every day I see about a quarter of a second of a TikTok until I hit the upload button. I upload the video, I do the thing, I hit upload, and then I close the app. And I do that once a day, right? So yes, I'm using social media during the Spartan Mode challenge, but I wanted to demonstrate this because that's the extent to which I use it, right? I get a quarter-second glance of the TikTok feed. I get a quarter-second glance of Instagram every day. The time it takes me to hit the button, right? To hit the upload button. So yeah, if you're building a brand, do that, right? Do that. That's fine. But if you're scrolling through the feed and liking some girl's bikini pics and stuff because you're a social media manager, you're just fooling yourself.
It's a great job.
Yeah. Where can I apply? Yeah, like, oh, this guy's liking all the best pics. We should give him a raise.
So and get paid to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is how to integrate this long-term after the program, right? After you run the Spartan Mode challenge. Mm-hmm. I feel like we talked a lot about the experience of it, and some of the loose ties in my mind are still around. How does this actually help? Like, for example, how would this help me overcome my porn addiction?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing it. I'm working out and I'm walking and reading.
Yeah.
But I'm still thinking about it. I'm in the shower. I'm like, oh my God, I missed whatever.
You know? Yeah. So there, I would say it's two things. One thing is what we talked about before, where it's easier to go hard. It's easier to abstain when you just cut stuff down to zero.
Right.
You know, the worst thing you can do as a porn addict is try to quit porn, but then you're still like scrolling through Instagram where you have like almost porn, right? You have all these girls posting this stuff, or you're, or I don't know, or you're people ask me about, oh, what about like anime or something, right? It's like, okay, so it's drawings instead of live action or something. It's like you're trying to give yourself a lesser version of the thing. Like you're just torturing yourself. It is so much easier to just cut it out, right? So you cut out porn to zero, obviously, but you also cut out all these other sources of stimulation to zero. And it is easier to do that than to try and wean yourself off somehow. But then the other factor is that because you're removing all the stimulation and all the nonsense, it puts you in a position where you will be confronting what we call the underlying issues very quickly. Okay, because there's basically some emotional pain. There's something you're running away from. There's some pain you're soothing with your porn use. And doing Spartan Mode will bring that into your consciousness, and you have nowhere to run. You know, here it is, and I can't distract myself with anything. So now what do I do? Well, I can sit here and feel these feelings, or I can write about them, or I can go for a walk and let my mind wander. And all of these things are good. All of these things are good ways to deal with this problem. And all the things you want to do, which is, I'm going to stuff my feelings down with some junk food, or I'm going to distract myself with a video game or whatever. These are all the things that keep the problem alive. These are all the things that perpetuate the problem, right? So and again, this is where I think the name Spartan Mode is actually quite apt, is like it confronts you with those demons. It confronts you with those problems, and you have to face them. So that's one way in which this helps with addiction. And then the third factor is that all of this positive lifestyle stuff is, first of all, making it easier to abstain because you're keeping yourself busy with other stuff. So, because you're working out, you're working on something important, etc., right? And it's giving you the experience of healthy dopamine. And this is super important because that's a big factor. Every addiction is highly tied to your dopamine system, to your reward-seeking system. And so part of your brain goes, we need this reward. And you take it away, that's very difficult to deal with. But what we're doing is we're taking it away and we're giving it a different reward, right? So it's kind of the difference between, it's like you have a bowl of candy in front of you. You're eating all the candy and it's making you fat and diabetic and you're going to die. That's not good. If I just take the bowl of candy away, you're like, but what are you doing? Why are you taking away my thing? There's an emotional response, and also I need to eat something, right? But if I take it away and I place a super healthy, delicious, tasty meal in front of you that just happens to be a whole food meal, you're like, oh, this is fine. I can still eat something. It's still tasty. And you can end up preferring that, right?
Yeah.
And you'll still, I'm not saying that this will, you might still just crave the candy. You might still struggle with wanting to have the candy every once in a while. But the fact that you have a healthy meal in front of you as an alternative makes it a lot easier to abstain from the candy. And it can teach you over time to prefer the healthy food over the junk food. And the same is true for porn versus other sources of dopamine, right? And this is something I've said previously. It's worth repeating. The goal of overcoming porn addiction is that you lose interest in porn. It's not that you successfully fight the urge to watch porn for the rest of your life. The urge goes away because basically given the option, like you want to get to the point where if someone says, if you're basically given the option, which of these, would you like to watch some porn right now? You go, no, I'd rather not, right? Because there's more interesting things to do, And so, and for me, that's definitely, and I also noticed that, by the way, certainly with things like exercise, right? Exercise is a much more rewarding type of reward, basically. So, if I could never exercise again, that would really pain me much more than if I could never watch porn again. I was like, whatever, Right. And also things like socializing. I think that a lack of social connection is often at the heart of, or a big factor in this kind of problem. Like if you had the experience of a lot of close social connections, even completely non-sexual ones, you'd be much less interested in porn. Because it's just like there's a compensatory thing, It's like you feel lonely, you feel disconnected from other humans, and you have a sex drive. And porn is kind of like, it gives you some of that. And this, by the way, is also why, obviously we have porn that's just hardcore porn, but we also have this stuff where, OnlyFans, where you have almost like a fake girlfriend, where you can send her messages and she sends you messages back and this kind of stuff. It's like this kind of shows that there's more going on, right? There's more going on than just the sexual desire. You would have no interest in exchanging text messages with an OnlyFans girl who you're paying a monthly fee to, if you had real friends with whom you feel close, right, and with whom you are exchanging text messages, So I think that's also where doing the things like the exercise, the meaningful work, and the socializing gives you this example of, here are the things you really want. Here are the things you actually really crave. This is the feeling you really crave that you actually never get from porn, that you're always seeking, right? Because an experience with porn is that you're constantly seeking. It's like you're never finding the thing you really want, That's why you end up having 27 tabs open, right? We've all done it, I know. Okay. Because you're like seeking and you're looking for something, and everything you pull up is not quite giving you the thing you're looking for. Yeah. And some of that thing is in reality. It can only be found in reality. So that's basically the third factor is you're removing the junk dopamine, you're replacing it with healthy dopamine sources, and that makes it easier for the brain rewiring to happen. Another aspect here, by the way, is that, and I have a separate video about this too, it's important to know that you can't undo a habit in your brain. So if you think of a habit as like a pathway of neurons in your brain that connect together, and if the same pathway connects together again and again, that gets strengthened over time. And that's basically how a habit forms. And that's how me picking up my mug and taking a sip is something that happens automatically, right? Because I've done it so often that there's a whole bunch of neurons wiring together in a certain pattern that are like reaching for the mug, bringing it to the lip, doing all this stuff, right? That's a habit. I've repeated that so often that it basically happens automatically. Right. And I can't undo that. There's nothing I can do. So repetition, doing the same thing over and over again, strengthens the connection in my brain. There's nothing I can do. There's no equivalent to repetition I can do to undo the connection in my brain. I can't do it. The only thing I can do to weaken a connection in my brain is to not use it anymore, right? To stop doing the same habit and to replace it with something else. So and picking up the cup is not a great example for this, but the habit of having a certain feeling of discomfort or something and then reaching for porn, that's a habit that you're reinforcing over time and making stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, the only thing you can do to weaken it is stop doing that, and over time, from not being used, the connections weaken. And the other thing you can do is you can replace the porn part of the habit with something else. So it can be, I have this feeling of discomfort, and what I do is I get out my notepad and I start writing about it, right? And eventually, so you're essentially keeping the first part of the pathway, which is, I feel like this, I want to do something about it. But then instead of reaching for my phone and pulling up Pornhub, I reach for my notebook and start writing. And I get some satisfaction out of the writing. I get a sense of resolution out of the writing. So eventually, I will prefer that. It's almost like a fork in the path, right?
Right.
And I start preferring this because it leads to better results. And so that's also a big part of the replacement habits is like you learn, you basically, you let the undesired connections in your brain atrophy by not using them.
Right. And
you replace some of the pathways, you kind of redirect them down a different path, right? And all of that, like basically all of Spartan Mode is designed to help you do that. A lot of it, by the way, is also just brain health. So the wiring of new neural connections in your brain can go faster or slower depending on what you eat and whether you get enough sleep and things like that. There's several lifestyle factors. And a lot of Spartan Mode is dialed in to make sure that your brain is growing at an optimal rate so that all of this wiring is happening faster than it would if you weren't following the rules of Spartan Mode.
Right. So it's kind of like a boot camp almost, right? Like a hard reset. You do this for 30 days and then from there, like as you were saying, right? I doubt that you want to do, it would be ideal if you just did it for the rest of your life. But you'd be like,
going,
like, hey, writing it in the evening is actually a fantastic habit. I'm going to continue that, right? You add that one thing every time you do the Spartan Mode challenge.
I think that doing the challenge is a really good way to put yourself in a position from which you can make good decisions. Because right now, you're so addicted and so stimulated that if I ask you how much time should you spend watching YouTube videos, you're not going to give a good answer. Right? Your addicted brain is going to take over and say, well, it should be a few hours. It is. And again, this is true for me. If you had asked me at the beginning of Spartan Mode, how much YouTube do you think you want to watch? How much is too little? I would have said some number that's greater than 0. Right. After Spartan Mode, I'm like, 0 is fine. Okay? I'm in a situation where I can make a better decision for my life. And I think this is a big goal, right? Where if you do Spartan Mode for 30 days, first of all, it will be a massive boost to your health across every aspect of your life, basically. But also, it puts you in a position where you can make real decisions about how much of this stuff do you actually want in your life. Right now, you can't make a good decision about that. You're too deeply entangled in the whole system, right? You're so addicted to all this stuff. You're addicted to stuff that you don't even realize you're addicted to. You take a step back from this for 30 days and you see how much do you actually want this? How much do you really want this? At that point, you can make an informed decision about that, because realistically, there's going to be habits like the writing that you probably just want to keep doing because it feels so good. It's so useful, right? You within 30 days, you realize like this is such a life-changingly positive habit. Why would I change that, right? Why would I stop? But I think also for the habits you might want to reintroduce, maybe you want to reintroduce social media. Maybe you want to reintroduce some of that stuff. But after 30 days, you'll be able to make a decision that's actually good for you, that actually comes from you.
And if you fall back into the stimulation trap or addiction, you know how to get out of it now, or you know how to reset yourself, right?
Exactly. You do the same thing. And I think that this is true for a lot of stuff. This is also, let's say with food, right? I think it's great to experiment with your diet, try different diets, do some fasting, do some, go vegan for a while, go do keto for a while, whatever, try different stuff, because again, it gives you that flexibility. A lot of people, I was vegan. I was fully vegan for a very long time, and I'm still mostly vegan. or vegetarian or whatever. But the thing is, most people, when they hear vegan, they go, "Oh, I could never live without meat." Really? go 30 days without meat and decide then, right? Because the truth is you could, and who knows, maybe you feel like way better without it. You don't even know, right? And to be fair, the other way is also true, right? It's like, look, maybe you'd feel way better on a keto diet. I don't know, but it's worth trying. Yeah. Try it out and see what happens, right? And for me, my dietary decisions are basically mostly made upon my own experiences, because I've tried all kinds of stuff, right? I've done like raw food only, I've done juice fasts, I've done water fasts, I've done all kinds of configurations of diets, and which first of all means that I never feel like, oh, I could never do without this or without that, because I probably already did it. And also I'm actually making a real informed decision. I know that, I really like rice, but if I eat a lot of rice, I feel like shit, so maybe I shouldn't have rice, Right.
Or as much, yeah.
Yeah, but I can make a real informed decision about it from my own experience. So I think this principle is actually true for a lot of stuff. Take a step back from things, put yourself in a position where you actually experience both sides of an issue, and then make a decision.
It's kind of like you're choosing who you want to be, right? Like, I heard this really interesting thing today. Now, I didn't watch the full video, so I don't know the ending, but I'm gonna leave you in the same open loop I'm in. So I guess the parable goes, there's two young fish swimming by, right? Mm-hmm. And an old fish comes by. He's going in the other direction. And the old fish is like, hey, morning, lads. How's the water today? And then just keeps going. And two fish keep swimming in the other direction. And like 10 minutes later, one of the fish looks at the other guy and says, bro, the hell is water? Right? Now, I have no idea what the resolution of this is.
No, that is the parable. That is it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad. Okay, because I was like, am I missing something?
No.
The thing you're trying to do with Spartan Mode is be like, look, you're in water.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? Like, what's quote unquote normal? Like, yes. Pull up your fucking screen time. I mean, your screen time. That is normal, and it should not be normal, right? The default mode of life that is presented to you on a silver platter is what allows these things and these companies to make tons and tons and tons of money. Exactly. It's coming at your expense. Yeah. So by doing this, you get to choose. Do I want to continue being, this guy over here that probably leads to being a Reddit mod or a Discord? I mean, no hate, but you know what I'm saying? The image that comes up. Or do I want to go this way, where it's like, a Spartan. Like, what does Leonidas look like? Yeah. I would rather have a fucking six-pack, than be the other guy.
Be the other guy, yeah. No, totally. I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it shows you you can only experience water basically by taking a step back. Yeah, by experience the absence of it for a bit. Yeah. One final thing that I think is maybe worth talking about. When I made the Spartan Mode video, someone asked me about music. Am I allowed to listen to music during this? And I said, I don't know, because music isn't that stimulative, So because I wasn't sure, I decided to do an experiment, and I spent the first half of this challenge without music and the second half with, to see what happens. And I was surprised to find that even music, I didn't miss that much. Even though I really like music, I didn't miss it as much. So I would have been happy to go without music for 30 days. And I think that's probably a good idea. I think just if you're going to do the Spartan Mode challenge, just do no music for 30 days. It's fine. I think also, because I was thinking about this more than, what's the recommendation here? I think what's harmful, even if it's only mildly harmful, is if you use music as one of the ways to stay constantly stimulated. Where, you're, so basically on the bathroom, you're scrolling through your phone, and then, every free moment you have, you're doing something with the screen, but then, now I have to drive to work. What do I do now? Well, I put on some music. Just to make sure that there's never a quiet moment, that I'm like never alone with my thoughts, right? Yeah. And I see a lot of that where people will have headphones on as they're walking, so you're listening to a podcast or listening to music while doing something else, right? Or, while buying groceries, or even while working, you're listening to music, because you just have this need for constant stimulation, even if it's mild stimulation. And I think that's not good. And the way I use music, especially now post-Spartan Mode, is like, I will listen to music when I'm listening to music, when I'm basically doing nothing else, right? So I don't like using music as background noise, because I think that's in a way, first of all, the music I like to listen to is too good for that. It's like it's worth paying attention to, basically.
Right.
And I think that there's something that's unhealthy about just this need of, I just need something to tickle my brain, because I can't just like sit here and drive to work for 10 minutes, So I just wanted to, that was my conclusion from the A/B test I did, basically, of music and no music during Spartan Mode. And yeah, my recommendation is for the 30-day period, just no music, see what that's like.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because one of the things I was thinking when you were describing, when those emotional things come up, right? And you had described, okay, I can either write about it or I can go for a walk. Mm-hmm. And in either case, even if you're not actively dealing with it, you still have to think about it and confront it, right? Yeah. But if you go for a walk and put on music, now you're just like getting carried away with the music and the lyrics. Yeah. It's a form of distraction in that regard.
It can be, yeah. It definitely can be, yeah. So that was my experience of 30 days of Spartan Mode challenge. If you have any questions about this, you can leave a comment in the YouTube version of this video, or you can go to the link in the description that brings you to the podcast page where there's a message button where you can leave a voice message. If you want to discover the most effective way to eliminate addictive behaviors from your life and replace them with good habits that will move you towards your goals, make sure you check out the first link in the description and sign up for the Quit by Healing program. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.